They say history is written by the victors. Wrong. It's written by the guys with the wiretaps. Welcome back to the deep dive. Tonight, we're hacking the ultimate cold case, the Jerusalem incident. Subject, a Galilean carpenter, radical, drifter, zero assets, zero army, but somehow public enemy number one. Enemy of the state. This is the Jesus File. Tonight we run the tape. We analyze the threat. We see what the state saw. A man who didn't just break the law, he fulfilled it. And that made him dangerous. Lock in, buckle up, and pray your clearance is high enough. This is the Jesus File.
What have we done? Please forgive us. We will not be silenced!
Jerusalem, Passover, 30 A.D. A city built for 50,000 now swells with 200,000 restless souls. Roman prefect Pontius Pilate faces a political powder keg. One false step could spark a riot and end his career. Amid this chaos, a single accusation transforms an itinerant preacher into Rome's most dangerous enemy of the state. But why did the world's mightiest empire fear a man with no army or wealth? To answer that, we have to begin with the calendar, the crowd, and the men who held the city in their grip.
My fellow citizens, listen to me now.
Pinning down the date of Jesus' execution means entering a long-standing debate among scholars. 2 years rise to the top, 30 A.D. and 33 A.D. Most experts, weighing gospel accounts against Roman and Jewish records, place the event in the spring of 30 A.D. The argument rests on a web of evidence: Luke's note about the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, the sequence of Passovers in John's Gospel, and calculations from ancient temple-building projects. Astronomical data that tracks the full moon which marks Passover points to the first weekend of April in 30 A.D., with some favoring April 6th or 7th on the Julian calendar. Others, reading the timeline of Jesus' ministry differently, set the date at Friday, April 3rd, 33 A.D. Both dates fall during Passover, a festival that always brought Jerusalem to a boiling point.
For glory!
Passover was not just a religious holiday. It was a national memory of freedom from foreign rule, celebrated in a city straining at its seams. Josephus, a 1st century historian, describes the city's normal population at about 50,000. During Passover, that number could quadruple, with 150,000 to 200,000 or more pilgrims crowding every street, rooftop, and courtyard. Families traveled from the countryside and distant provinces, swelling the city beyond its capacity. Temporary camps covered the hills outside the walls. The air was thick with the sounds of traders, animals, and prayers. Roman soldiers patrolled the streets, their presence a constant reminder of imperial control. The festival's meaning made the city especially tense, and pockets of tension were everywhere. Passover celebrated deliverance from oppression, and in Roman eyes, that made Jerusalem a tinderbox. Every year the authorities braced for trouble. The memory of past uprisings and the hope of a new deliverer hung over the crowds. Any talk of kingship or messianic claims could trigger panic among the governors and priests. For the Romans, the danger was not just religious fervor, but the possibility of open revolt. With so many people packed into the city, a single spark could set off a riot. The stakes of any disturbance were enormous for the rulers and for the population trying to fulfill their sacred obligations. The calendar and the crowd set the scene for everything that followed, placing every decision under the shadow of potential chaos. At the heart of Jerusalem's tense Passover stood a layered system of rulers, each holding a piece of the city's fate. At the top of the imperial chain was Tiberius Caesar, emperor since 14 AD, ruling from Rome with a distant but absolute authority. His orders shaped the policies of provinces across the empire, including Judea, a territory often restless under foreign control. Judea itself was governed not by a king, but by a Roman prefect. Pontius Pilate, an equestrian by rank, held this post from 26 AD to 36 AD. Appointed by the emperor, Pilate was responsible for maintaining order, collecting taxes, and enforcing Roman law. He commanded auxiliary troops, not full legions, and operated most of the year from the coastal city of Caesarea. During major festivals like Passover, he moved his headquarters to Jerusalem, bringing soldiers to reinforce the city and project Roman power. Pilate's authority covered all criminal justice, including the power to impose the death penalty, especially for charges that threatened imperial rule, such as treason or sedition. Alongside the Roman administration, a separate but intertwined structure managed Jewish religious and some civil affairs. The high priest at this time, Joseph Caiaphas, was the most prominent Jewish official. Unlike earlier centuries, his position was not purely hereditary. Caiaphas had been appointed by Valerius Gratus, Pilate's predecessor, and held office for nearly 2 decades, a sign of Roman trust in his ability to keep the peace. Caiaphas presided over the Sanhedrin, a council of elders and legal experts drawn from the city's leading families. This body handled religious law, settled disputes, and advised on matters affecting the temple. While the Sanhedrin could judge many cases, it lacked the authority to execute capital sentences without Roman approval. The relationship between Pilate and Caiaphas was pragmatic. Both depended on each other to keep Jerusalem stable, especially during volatile times like Passover. Pilate relied on Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin to read the mood of the local population and diffuse unrest before it reached Roman ears. Caiaphas, in turn, needed Pilate's backing to enforce decisions that might provoke backlash or require harsh measures. The Sanhedrin's influence was real, but always subject to the limits set by Roman law and the unpredictable will of the prefect. This web of power meant that any major disturbance, especially one involving claims of kingship or messianic hopes, would quickly draw both the temple leadership and the Roman governor into the same drama. Decisions about life and death, order and chaos, rested in the hands of these 2 men and the institutions they led. As Passover crowds filled the city, both Pilate and Caiaphas watched for signs that the fragile balance might tip. Roman law drew a sharp line between religious disputes and crimes against the state. When Jesus stood before the Roman governor, the issue was no longer blasphemy. Under Roman rule, blasphemy might provoke local outrage, but it carried no penalty under imperial law. The charge had to be recast in terms the Romans took seriously: treason, or in their language, maiestas. Maiestas was more than a word. It was a legal category rooted in the Lex Iulia Maiestatis, a law dating back to the reign of Augustus. At its core, maiestas meant any act that diminished the dignity or security of the Roman people or the emperor. This covered open rebellion, plots against the state, and most relevant in Judea, any unauthorized claim to kingship. In the provinces, the governor held the ius gladii, the right of the sword, to judge and punish such threats without waiting for instructions from Rome. The Sanhedrin, aware that their own verdict would not sway Pilate, reframed their case. Luke's gospel preserves the words they brought. We found this man subverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king. These were not theological accusations. They were political charges, tailored for a Roman audience. Refusing taxes and claiming kingship were classic forms of sedition. For the Romans, the title King of the Jews was not a harmless religious claim. In a territory still haunted by memories of revolt, any movement that gathered crowds and spoke of a new king looked like the start of insurrection. Roman law recognized only one legitimate source of kingship: the emperor. Anyone who claimed royal authority without imperial consent threatened the very order of the province. The penalty was death, usually by crucifixion, a punishment reserved for slaves, bandits, and those who challenged the state. Pilate's role was not as a theologian, but as a judge of threats to Roman power. He questioned Jesus directly, "Are you the king of the Jews?" The answer mattered less than the fact that the question had to be asked. Pilate was not interested in the intricacies of Jewish law. His concern was the security of Judea during its most volatile festival. In the logic of Roman rule, a claim to kingship, public, unlicensed, and in a city ready to explode, could not be ignored. The legal transformation from blasphemy to treason set the stage for everything that followed. Pilate, holding the authority of the emperor, now faced a different kind of dilemma: whether to execute a man whose kingship was more rumor than reality, or to risk being seen as soft on sedition. In the Roman world, the charge of maiestas left little room for hesitation. Pilate faced a crowd that was growing louder by the minute. As prefect, he held the power of life and death, but in this hour, authority felt like a trap. The charges against Jesus had shifted from blasphemy to sedition. Pilate's own interrogation cut to the heart. He asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus' answer, "You say so," offered no defense, yet it was enough to keep the political charge alive. Pilate looked for a way out. According to the Gospels, there was a custom during Passover: release one prisoner as an act of goodwill. Whether this tradition was Roman policy or a local arrangement is debated, but the story's power lies in the choice Pilate offered the crowd: Jesus, accused of claiming kingship, or Barabbas, a man imprisoned for insurrection and murder. Barabbas was no ordinary criminal. Mark and Luke describe him as a rebel caught in an uprising, a figure whose violence against Rome might have earned him admiration among some pilgrims. In John's account, he is called a lestus, a word that could mean bandit or revolutionary. The crowd knew his name. Pilate presented both men and asked, "Whom do you want me to release to you?" The answer came back with force: Barabbas. The choice was not just between two prisoners, but between two visions of threat. One, a preacher whose kingship sounded spiritual and ambiguous. The other, a proven enemy of Roman rule. Pilate pressed again, "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" The crowd's reply was immediate: "Crucify him." Pilate hesitated. The Gospels paint him as reluctant, sensing the envy of the priests and the innocence of the accused. But the crowd's mood turned dangerous. John records a warning shouted from the crowd: "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." This was more than a chant. It was a threat to report Pilate to Rome as disloyal. In Tiberius's reign, that accusation could end a career, or worse. Pilate's authority rested on keeping order and showing loyalty to the emperor. A riot at Passover, or a rumor that he had spared a rival king, could bring disaster from above. The pressure broke through. Matthew's gospel describes Pilate's final gesture. He called for water, washed his hands before the crowd, and declared, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." The symbolism was clear. He wanted it known that the decision was forced by public demand, not Roman justice. Yet the sentence was his to give, and he gave it. Pilate released Barabbas and handed Jesus over to be flogged and crucified. The fate of both men was sealed not by law alone, but by the volatile mix of festival crowds, political fear, and the threat of imperial scrutiny. Roman crucifixion was designed as a warning, a statement of absolute power. After Pilate gave the order, the first step was scourging. Soldiers used a flagrum, a whip with metal and bone woven into its thongs, to tear into the condemned man's back, shoulders, and legs. This was not just punishment, it weakened the body, hastening death and maximizing pain. The Gospels mention this explicitly, and Roman sources confirm that scourging often preceded crucifixion, especially for those charged with treason. The condemned carried the horizontal beam, the patibulum, through the city streets. The final destination was Golgotha, a hill outside Jerusalem's walls known as the Place of the Skull. The site was chosen for maximum visibility, near a main road where crowds would pass. Roman law made executions public to deter others from challenging authority. The upright stake, or stipes, was likely already set in the ground. At the site, Jesus was stripped, then either tied or nailed to the cross. Archaeological evidence from a 1st century tomb in Jerusalem shows an iron nail driven through the heel bone of a crucified man, his name lost but his fate clear. The nail bent against the wood, making it impossible to remove the body without leaving the nail embedded in bone. This single heel bone, pierced by a Roman spike, is the only direct physical proof of crucifixion from this period found in Jerusalem. Above Jesus' head, soldiers fixed a titulus, a board stating the official charge. Roman practice required this for executions of political enemies. Pilate's order was blunt: Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The sign was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek, so no one could miss the message. In 3 languages, the state declared the crime, claiming kingship in Caesar's domain. The titulus turned the cross into a public warning. Every passerby saw the cost of challenging Rome's order. The mechanics of crucifixion, scourging, procession, nailing, and the charge above were not just about death, but about spectacle and control. Even in the silence of bone and wood, the message was unmistakable. Outside the Christian tradition, the story of Jesus' execution surfaces in the writings of 2 ancient historians whose words still shape how the event is understood. Josephus, a Jewish aristocrat writing in the late 1st century, records that Jesus was condemned to the cross under Pontius Pilate after accusations brought by the city's leading men. The passage, found in his Antiquities of the Jews, has been debated for centuries, and later Christian scribes likely added phrases about Jesus' divinity and resurrection. Yet most scholars agree that the core remains Josephus' own, a wise man executed by Roman authority whose followers persisted after his death. This is the earliest non-Christian mention of Jesus' crucifixion, and it anchors the event in the political realities of Pilate's Judea. A generation later, the Roman senator and historian Tacitus offers a second independent witness. In his Annals, completed around 116 AD, Tacitus writes that Christus, from whom the name Christian had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilatus. Tacitus, no friend to Christians, uses the term extreme penalty as a standard Roman reference to crucifixion. He places the execution firmly within Tiberius's rule and Pilate's prefecture, treating it as a matter of record rather than rumor or legend. Both Josephus and Tacitus point to the same facts. A Galilean teacher, condemned and executed by Roman order during a period of imperial suspicion and provincial unrest. Their testimony stands apart from the gospel narratives, written for different audiences and purposes, yet both confirm the central action: the Roman state's decision to crucify a man perceived as a threat to its authority. What is missing from the ancient record is just as telling. No imperial rescript survives, no letter from Pilate to Tiberius, no Senate debate about the case. For Roman officials, Jesus' death was a provincial matter, handled swiftly and left off the rolls of imperial correspondence. The silence of the archives speaks to the scale of the event in its own time. a local execution, unnoticed by the machinery of empire, yet destined to echo through the centuries. In the end, it is the brief, almost incidental notes of Josephus and Tacitus that secure the historical footprint of the crucifixion, bridging the gap between Christian memory and the wider world's written record. In every era, power fears a rival, real or imagined. The charge that sealed Jesus' fate, treason against the state, echoes in courtrooms and headlines today. As governments still grapple with dissent, the line between faith and sedition remains dangerously thin. History's verdict is clear: the struggle over authority and conscience never truly ends. Share your thoughts below.
What have we done? Please forgive us. We will not be silenced!